Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we're going to be doing our mock draft 2.0 for the offseason. It's been about a month since our last one. We waited a little bit to get started. I think by this time last year we had like 4 or 5 of them at least, but I kind of want to have them more spread out this year because I think when you do them every week and you're just constantly throwing them out, it's easy to do that because these are probably the videos that get the most views for me. Um, you end up forcing yourself to just make different picks, or you're doing the same thing each time, and it just gets to where I don't think it's genuine every time. I don't think you get enough new content each time to justify it. And so, now we've got the Senior Bowl passed. Still got the game technically, but the practices have gone. That's really the important part of the week. And so, I think you have a lot of new insight on players that would be good options each round is very much changed. The landscape is very much different. Looking at just the list of guys that I have right now as logical first round picks, I've got 7 guys I'm looking at mainly as far as where we pick. And even trading back, over half this list is all new players from what was probably a month ago. So there are new things to talk about, absolutely. Now, first thing we're going to do with this is I do want to show you the scenario with the roster going in. We always do this so it makes sense to you guys, like what we have, what we don't, what we're looking at. And it's always got the theme of we're trying to fill the biggest needs. We're not going to fill every single little thing. But we're going to make it to where this team, we feel like, does not have a position where they are so bad that it could be a fatal flaw. Maybe the accumulation of them could do that, but we're trying to fill it the best we can without going too crazy. And I think this is an off-season, as you can see, based off the cap space in 2025, where it'd be nice to try to plan for the future, save up a bunch of money, make yourself in a situation to where you can re-sign all your players next year. You can sign the players you draft and develop. I think that's smart for this team. I don't think you want to go spend a ton in free agency, but I think you got to spend a little bit. You've clearly got needs. You've got to address them. You can't just guess that they're going to get filled in the draft. It's not a smart way of going about it. So this is our scenario. I'm going to run through this really fast because usually I take way too long on this and it gets kind of boring. Guys we cut: Brandon Scherf, Cam Robinson, Fatukasi, Jenkins, Jones. So you're losing 2 offensive linemen. Anton's kicking over a left tackle. Your defensive tackle is gone. You're replacing Rayshawn with Antonio Johnson. Zay Jones is walking. I think with Zay, the ceiling is him being worth the contract, and that's not good enough. You have to be worth more in the contract at the ceiling. Otherwise, you're just taking a risk that has no reward, right? So he's a guy cut for that reason. I brought back Ezra Cleveland on a 1-year prove-it deal. Josh Allen, I gave a long-term extension. Calvin Ridley was franchise tag. We've talked about that duo of moves to make this offseason quite a bit because it's pretty logical for the Jaguars. So Josh Allen and Calvin Ridley, 2 players that I want to treat like that. Tim Jones, I gave him the year FA extension. Same with Gregory Jr., so really low cap numbers there. Daniel Thomas, I gave a 3-year extension. He is a good special teamer, and so you might as well keep him around. No reason to let him go. I gave him a decent contract, not $2 million a year, just a little ways under that. I think that's about where his value is. And then your additions in free agency. Now that the tackles would be Anton Harrison and Walker Little, I brought in Cameron Fleming as the swing tackle. I think he'd be really good for that. Really cheap as well, and still got some juice left in the tank. Now Kendrick Bourne was another addition. I think when he's on the field, he's a good wide receiver. It's all about keeping him healthy, though. And so you could absolutely bring in another receiver in this scenario. But that's how I would probably treat it with receiver. I'd bring in someone like that. It's got upside. You hope they stay healthy. But, if he goes down, you've got people you can play behind him. And you might even get more people during the draft. So I do like a move like that. Now, Connor Williams, he is a center right now. He could play guard as well. He can really fit anywhere on the interior. He projects really well to this offensive system. I also think he's not going to be a player who breaks the bank because he is a center and he's coming off an ACL tear. might not even be this cap number. I put it a little higher because I think he's a much better player than what the contract was projecting. So I gave him $8 million a year. I think that's fair. I think he's a player you might keep past next season, but he's a really good addition at least for 1 year and should perform at a high level in all aspects of the game for you. That's a big need. You have to hit center. So theoretically in this world, you've hit center. Even if you draft a center and he moves out to guard, the position's solved. So I feel good about that. Now Marcus Davenport is the final guy. A little bit of a versatile defensive lineman, although I think he's played more at like defensive end. Came from New Orleans, played there I think 5 years, and then he went over to Minnesota last year. He played all 5 years, I believe, with Ryan Nielsen. Did really well with them. Last year got injured early in the season, wasn't as productive. So you're probably getting him on a relatively cheap, affordable deal. And you have a ton of upside with that. So I locked him down for 2 years, $13 million over those 2 years, so 6.5 a year. I feel good about that contract. But that's what we got going on here. Lots of cap space in the future. A lot to work with. And keep in mind, of course, a lot of this gets filled with fifth-year options for like Trevor Lawrence, for Travis Etienne. Now, if you extend them, you can push that down the road even more. But there are a lot of things to worry about in 2025. It's really going to be a big year for determining the future of this team. So having a lot of cap space is a really good scenario. So now we can look at the draft. And I want to note this before we go hog wild in this. The rankings are not fully updated here. There are players who are nowhere near where they should be ranked. An example, you'll probably see get drafted. Very likely you will see him get drafted in this because I would still take this approach on draft day anyway. Darius Robinson out of Mizzou. He's ranked like 113th on here right now, yet he should probably go first round. He's in that conversation. He had the production last year. He performed admirably at the Senior Bowl. He won every rep that I was watching. He has the size. He has the upside. He has the technical refinement already to be really successful. So it's a question of like, for one, how the heck did we not see this before? And two, what are the problems? This is a really good player. I think he should go higher. So I'm not going to pick him at 105 just because I can. I'm going to pick him if he goes to us, maybe early second rounds, because I'm looking at it like, where is this guy probably going to get targeted by teams? And there are always players who are going to fall. Joey Porter Jr. did last year. But I'm not looking at it like, okay, I could wait this long to go get him just because the sim says so. I'm thinking about it as if these are 31 actual teams who know the value of him as a player. That way we're not getting away with stupid value. That's not going to happen. We want this to be more realistic. So that's the idea. That's what we're trying to do. So you will see moves that probably get an F on the sim just because of that. I wouldn't agree with the grade. That's just probably what's going to happen. As far as needs, big things I'm looking at, wide receiver, ideally an outside player, offensive line, literally everywhere except for left tackle is a possibility to address. As far as the long-term future, because there isn't a single player on this roster that would be starting in this scenario that's here past 2024. I think the only exception, if he did start, would be Cooper Hodges. And he hasn't played a regular season snap, so, it's kind of questionable. Defensive tackle is another one I think could be needed. Could be a versatile player who also plays defensive end, but I think that's very much a need. And then cornerback would be another one. Ideally a versatile player. It would be great if you could bring in someone who can lock down the slot right now, kick outside when there's injuries, and probably kick outside ultimately in 2025. That would be best case scenario, but we're going to very much consider players that are outside only just because the future of that position is very volatile. It's changes that could take place very soon. So you could get a player that might not start a ton the first year, but he's a long-term starter after that. That's very valuable. In worst case scenario, if he's such a good player, you could probably kick him into the slot for at least a little bit. So that's how we're treating this. So we're going to hop in. First order of business, You always got to send Atlanta the pick for Calvin Ridley. I got to find them on here. Here we go. It is the third rounder in this scenario. Whatever you got to do to make it a third rounder, I'm doing. I believe the franchise tag does that, so that's going to be what we do. If I learn differently in the future video, then we won't do that. But that's how we're going to treat it. So these are our picks. We got our first, our second. We have a compensatory third, 2 fourths, a fifth, a sixth, compensatory sixth, and our seventh. So a lot of draft capital we'll work with. The only thing that's really downgraded is the third rounder, because you go from 79 to 96, but not the end of the world. Okay, wow, I did not change the speed at all. Oh god, okay, that's fine. What I was gonna say was that if we have one of the top receivers, like top 3, so 1, 2, 3, don't like the order they were taken, but if one of them fell into like the teens, we're gonna move up. If Joe Walt fell, we're going to move up. That's not going to happen, though. And then Talise Fuaga, if he gets down to like 14 or 15, we're going to move up. He went at 12. So this is okay. It's not the end of the world. I got the speed fixed now, though. We have one trade offer. It is probably at a really good spot. So here's how I'm going to break down our situation here. I have, like I said earlier, 7 players that I would like to target around this range in the first round. Some of them I'd like to trade down for. Some of them I trade really far down for to pick them. The guy I would trade up for was Talise Fuaga. He's one of those 7 players. The guys I would consider picking here are Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, and Jackson Powers Johnson. I would trade down a little bit for Brian Thomas Jr. The 2 guys I would trade down really far for are Tyler Guyton and Darius Robinson. That's how I'm looking at this. Because there are so many players that we have in consideration, we have 3 right now. It's not a big gap between them. Those are Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, Jackson Powers Johnson Jr. or Jackson Powers Johnson. I'm going to move down here because we need to get more capital, ideally good capital, not like 7th round picks and all that we're not going to do anything with. But good capital in this draft that we can draft good players with. We can draft starters. And we're still going to get a very good player at this point. Because I like one thing Jordan DeLugo said. The gap between 10 through 30 is very small this year. And so where we're at, if someone falls in love with a player like Tampa Bay, whoever that is here, we're going to take that trade a lot of the time. So we're going to take this. Considering the trade we did before with them. So it was us moving up from 33 to 27. 6 spots much later in the first round than this. This is 9 spots. In that one, we had to give up 106 and like 155 or 180 or something around there. In this, I think 58's fair for where it falls. It's 9 spots. It's all the way from towards the back of the first round to middle of the first round. I think this is a trade that could be accepted. Worst case scenario, if they want a little bit back, you could send them one of these later picks. You're absolutely fine doing that because the get on their second rounder is extremely valuable. So that's what we're going to do in this scenario. So they accept that. We're going to let this roll. Players we're watching: Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, Jackson Powers Johnson. And then Brian Thomas is in there 1 2. If these players fly off the board, then we might consider moving up. We get Terrion Arnold, Jackson Powers Johnson, Brian Thomas Jr. So we got one guy left here that we would have picked at 17. We got an extra second rounder out of it. I think this is a really good scenario. And that's Quinyon Mitchell. I have him really close to Terrion Arnold as far as where I value him. And I'm a huge Terrion Arnold fan, by the way. He is probably my favorite prospect in the entire draft right now. But I think that Mitchell has more experience. He is an outside-only guy right now. Maybe you could force him into the slot for a year if you need to. But that's some of the issue. I do think he's more physical, though. I think he has a little bit less of a learning curve just because he has more experience playing, much more experience. So I don't have much separating them, if anything. I just right now barely give the edge to Terry and Arnold. So you move back, 9 spots, and you pick a guy that you love, a guy you feel like is going to be really damn good in the NFL. I don't see how he isn't. I feel good about that pick. So Quignon's going to be our pick here. Now, things we're looking at in the second round, we now have extra draft capital. We could very much consider moving up into the early second for a guy like Tyler Guyton. Another one I would consider, Troy Fatanu would be one. I think Darius Robinson very much has to be considered too. But I'm looking at probably trading around 40. So if one of those guys is available, very much consider them. But we'll see. I know Robinson will be just the way this works, and so we'll probably be getting him realistically. But we'll see what happens. Guyton and Fatanu fly off really early. So those guys, first round picks, not that shocking. Darius Robinson's still here. This is around when you get in the striking range to move up. I think you could move up even further if you really want to, and I would do that for Darius Robinson. That would be a price worth paying. But 40 is pretty close to, I think, right now. This could very much change by the time of the draft, but this is probably around where he is right now. So we're going to move up from 48 to 40. Probably have to give up 116. That would get this trade done. That's pretty good value. We do lose a fourth, but we're going to get a player we really like. And like I said earlier, could I just sit here at 48 and get Darius Robinson? Yeah, it's going to happen because he's not ranked higher on the sim. But in real life, if he's sitting here at 40, Washington's considering picking him, other teams are considering trading up, he would be going around this range. And that's how we're treating this because we want to have this be semi-realistic. Or not even just semi-realistic, we want it to be realistic. So that's the move we make here. You've got some other options too. A.D. Mitchell, really good receiver. I still think I might have Darius Robinson over him right now. I think it's debatable, but those are players I'd have really close. I like Leggett a lot. I like Barden a lot. But still, in this scenario, I am going to go down. I'm going to pick Darius Robinson because this is where he should go. He should be a first rounder. Mitchell, I think, is an early second. So he's going to be our pick. Now, with 58 players I'm watching, Mitchell's going to be off the board by then. Probably the same with Barden and Leggett. If they fall, I'm considering them. And I might be watching Kingsley Suamataia is another one. I felt like he did pretty good at the Senior Bowl this week. So let's go. Let's pick our guy. Going to get our versatile defensive lineman. And I don't know if I've said this yet in the video. There was talk at the Senior Bowl about who the NFL comparison was for him. This got leaked, I think, the first day people were talking about him. And you know who they're comparing him to in the NFL? These are NFL execs saying this. Chris Jones from Kansas City. That's the comparison for Darius Robinson. I don't see the size necessarily right now being that. I have to look at closer. I just don't feel like he looks as big. But this guy was winning every single rep. He plays all over the place. He plays well. He's developed. He's got size. He has everything you're going to look for in a defensive lineman. That's why we've drafted him for so long to Jacksonville in mock drafts, because you could use this kind of player. It's phenomenal value at this point. So we're going to make that pick. So Mitchell goes off. Barden goes off. Leggett goes off. Now, could Suamataia fall to 58? Yeah, he could. But we're going to be smart here. We're going to try to guarantee we get this because you got Green Bay picking in front of you. You think they'd pick him? I think there's very much a chance of that. You know, Dallas even could consider it because I think Tyler Smith, I can't remember what the dang name is, but I know one of their tackles is getting very old. So we're going to just move up a couple spots. We're going to make sure we get this done. See what that takes. 211's fine. This is only 2 spots in the second round. It's not going to take a big pick to go do it. So we're going to get that done. Now, if we needed a safety, Tyler Nubin would be phenomenal value. at this point. I just think he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. But we're going to go with Kingsley Suamataia. Now, I'm a little concerned about the run blocking, but from what I saw, I felt like he was pretty good this week. I think he did well at the Senior Bowl. That's kind of where your need falls right now. Other players as well that you could consider, like I said, Newman is one, Kinchins is another. I think Adissa Isaac, if you hadn't hit edge so hard, would be in consideration, but you kind of have a hard situation for him to be starting on this team in this scenario. Brendan Rice is another name I would very much consider at this point. I think he could be a really good starter. Um, I'd have him and Suamataia very close on my board. But I just think that you also have to consider which one's a bigger need. And also, on top of that, what am I thinking? Gosh. I think I'm losing my train of thought here. I think I think they're very close prospects. I think one is a bigger need. I think you probably need to go after that direction. Rice, I had some concerns about watching. He was very physical, but I'm concerned about the catching, especially in contested scenarios. He did not have strong hands like I wanted. So I think Suamataia is probably going to be the pick here. My only concern is him developing into a good run blocker. I think that's something you could work out. It's a solid pick in the second round. Worst case scenario, this guy is going to be able to come in and start when needed, but he's going to challenge for that right tackle spot. I think you could get him some depth or get him some training there and kind of try to prepare him for the NFL. But I think he'd be a good pick in the second round. You get in on this tackle class, fill a big need. So we're going to see who's sitting here around 96. There is a player I'm going to consider moving up for here. We're going to see if he sits here. Okay. We're here at 90. One person that really stood out to me at the Senior Bowl, and it wasn't necessarily because he was doing a ton of different things than expected, but because I felt like he confirmed a lot about his play, and that is really important to me, that he was able to do that. They also played him outside quite a bit. I think he did fine out there. I think he has the physicality to succeed on the outside, and it's simply just getting the guy trained up to go do it. We're going to move up for this guy. Going to move 195. That's accepted. The guy I'm talking about is Malachi Corley. Malachi Corley is a fantastic football player. And I think when he comes to the NFL, he's going to quickly be a very successful receiver. I think he's going to be someone that in the future would be a player we're comparing people to. But I think he's his own person right now. I think he's a very different prospect than a lot of people we've seen. He's a running back playing receiver. They call him the Yak King for a reason. He is phenomenal after the catch. You think they couldn't use this guy? They could play him outside if they can train him up. I think he can win out there. Maybe not like jump balls and all that, but I think he's got everything he needs to separate and to be open and have success there. I think Calvin Ridley can stretch the field already, so I think you got a good group of people. But Corley, he's got everything you want. He's going to be able to do those screens as well, actually get positive yards. He's going to do all the crazy stuff. You can move him at running back. This is a chess piece for the offense and a starter in that as well. So he's the guy I'm picking here. So I feel really good about that pick. I think he's a great player to bring in at this point, and I think he should go much higher. But it's just the question of, can you coach him up on the outside, because he's played 90-95% of his snaps, from the from slot alignment. So that is a concern. Now, 114. This is an interesting one to me. There's a couple players I really like here that don't make sense for Jacksonville. Spencer Rattler, I think, has a lot of upside. He'd be a great candidate to let develop. But, obviously for him to be worth the pick, your franchise quarterback has to fail. So it's not a great scenario. I would not be mad if they picked him at this point. If he's sitting there, I think that's fine value, because you do need a backup. You do need to upgrade there. And it is quarterback. That could be an exception to the general rule that you want to find starters in the draft. But I think we're going to skip on that in this scenario. Marshawn Lloyd, I felt like he was the best receiving back on the field by far during the Senior Bowl. Every single play, ran great routes, great cuts, strong hands. Like, he's going to be phenomenal there. But that's Travis Etienne's role for this team. You've got Zach Zinner sitting here as well. You could get a guard out of this pick. You've got your right tackle in this scenario. You need, you need your right guard. So Zinner is very much an option for the team at this point. He might end up being our pick here. Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, I felt like was pretty solid during Senior Bowl week 2, and I think he's going to be a starter in the NFL. I don't think a high-level one, but I think he's going to be a starter. You got Kyrie Jackson as well. I really like that player. I think he's a good one. I think we're going to move back here. We're going to get ourselves a couple extra picks. Man, I wish... can't trade with them, looks like. It's not really like anyone to trade with here. Let me see if... Oh, man. Problem here is the capital that these teams have after. I don't really like it. I would love to trade back, but I don't think any of those teams make sense. I think at this point, you clearly need a right guard. There's an argument he's the best player on the board here as well. I think Zach Zinner is going to be our pick at this point. You get a starter this year, fill out your offensive line. My only concern is what Kingsley can do as a run blocker, because I'm not super high on that, and I want to have balanced offensive linemen, but I think he's really good value at that point in the draft. Kyrie Jackson would have been a great player to bring in too, but it's hard to see the ability to start for him on this team because you have Tyson Campbell, Darius Williams, and Quinyon Mitchell, all outside players, and Kyrie is very much an outside cornerback. Now at this pick, Ben Sinnot's sitting here. Very much a name I'm thinking about. I like Jasheen Davis. Brandon Coleman had a hilarious play yesterday during the final practice. They were lining up offensive linemen at receiver. It was pretty funny to watch. Chow Smith-Wade, he's another one that I think he's going to be a good slot corner in the NFL. I think he's going to work out there. There's a lot of names I kind of like. Let's see. Kansas City's willing to trade with us. It's just, yeah, I don't think we can do it. No one has the capital that you'd even accept. Nothing is really useful. In this scenario, you have Ben Sinnott sitting here. I think his usage is very similar to Brendan Strange in the way that he plays. I think he is more physical. I think he's a lot more ferocious after the catch. He got compared to George Kittle after the catch. That's the one thing I've heard about him, and I see it in the way he plays. He runs through people. He doesn't try to go around. He just runs straight through people. And so I like that about him a lot, but he's not as much of an athlete as Brendan Strange. However, I think this is someone you bring in as a fullback at times. I think you start him at tight end here and there. I think he can be a good blocker. He'll be an upgrade over Brendan Strange there. I think he's a good pick. I think out of all these players, you got him. Jasheen is close for me. And then Chow Smith-Wade. You could get... Man, it's hard. You could get a good slot corner, or you could go after Ben Sinnott. We're going to go with the good slot corner. I really like Ben Sinnott. I'd love to have him here, but I don't see where he's going to be able to start. I can see Chow Smith-Wade starting in the slot. There's more upside there. I think the players are really close. That's going to be why we go that direction. And then if you guys know me at all, you know what this last pick's going to be, most likely. We'll see. If anyone really good's on the board for this point, we'll pick him. Usually we go kicker at the end of these things because I think that's a position of need for Jacksonville. It'd be good to get a young one that you can develop and can be a long-term starter like you thought Josh Lambo was going to be. Not that you drafted him or anything, but I think that would be the ideal scenario. So that's kind of how we're going to treat this. We'll see what's here at 237. It might be someone that we could use. Okay, we do got one name we could go after. We got two, actually. So we did not draft a center in this. Kingsley, let's see if I pronounce this last name right, Aguakun. He doesn't have great PFF grades, but I watched him play, and I think he's a good backup center to develop. I think he does have some potential. And when I look at the Florida Gators, I'm thinking about taking prospects from there. I just don't think the coaching is that great. I don't think they do well with their talent. They're supposed to be able to recruit well. They just don't have a team that performs well a lot of the time. I think coaching is a huge thing for them. And so you get a guy with potential that's coming from a team like that where you really feel like you can coach him up. That's the kind of player I'd pick around this point because you have the upside of maybe getting a starter. Probably a decent backup, but potentially a starter in the best case scenarios. So Kingsley Aguakun is going to be our final pick here. Would have been Will Reichard if we didn't have him sitting there. Or Gabe Hall, actually, would have been in consideration. But those are going to be our picks for this one. Some different names from what you usually have, especially in different places too. Some of them, even the same names, just going in different spots. But we got Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Robinson. Like I said, it's going to give us an F on that one. I don't care. It's probably going earlier than this. Kingsley Suamataya, Malachi Corley, Zach Zinner, Chow Smith-Wade, Kingsley Aguakun. So what do you get out of your draft? You don't get any future capital. You don't give up future capital. It's only what you had to start. You had 9 picks. You turn that into Quinyon Mitchell, really good outside corner. And you find a way to get him on the field with Williams and with Tyson Campbell this year. Kick him outside when there's injuries. He's going to start outside long term with Tyson Campbell. And you're going to have a really good group of players there. Darius Robinson, he might be the one I'm the most excited about because I think he has the most upside. I just think he's going to be great in the NFL, and that's why he's in my thoughts for 17 right now. Not at the top of that list. He's at the bottom right now, but he's at least on my radar at this point. Kingsley Suamataya, I would like to see him be better in run blocking, but from what I saw at the Senior Bowl, he felt like a pretty sound player. Didn't have a whole lot of problems, had a lot of strength in the way he plays. We need to be a more physical offensive line. If he can bring that to the NFL, he's a good player. It's good value there, and I think you feel good about that kind of pick. Malachi Corley, this is a sneaky one. If you can train him up on the outside, that would be phenomenal for this team. You got Kendrick Bourne in this scenario already as well, so you have your replacement for Zay Jones. Corley can be used all over the place, but you're going to mainly try to get him to learn playing outside. He did at the Senior Bowl quite a bit. He did pretty well out there. So I like that. I see the upside. I think he could be a phenomenal receiver for this team given a little bit of time. And then even at the start, I think he could be good in some aspects. So I really like him for Jacksonville. Zach Zinner was a clear value pick. You're getting a leader. You're getting a starter. You're getting a good football player. My only concern with him are the lapses once in a while where he gets pancaked by a guy. That's something I saw on film a few too many times. But I think he can coach that out of him. I think you're going to get a good player. You feel really good about this offensive line. And then Chow Smith-Wade, thought he did really well at the Senior Bowl. Not a perfect prospect, but I think he's a guy who starts in the NFL. You feel good about him as a draft pick. And then Kingsley Aguakun, I think you get a backup center here, someone you can develop, try to get something out of him. It's the best you're going to do at that point. It would have been him or Gabe Hall for that pick. So overall, I'm really excited for the defense with the early on additions. I think you hit some big needs. Only concern is like who's going to start in the slot. But I think you have a really good group of players on defense, a lot to work with. Offensive line has been pretty much redone. Overall, you have one returning starter playing at their original position in 2023, and that is Ezra Cleveland, and he only played half the year there. So it's interesting because like Anton, he kicks over from right to left. So You got a learning curve, sure, for Kingsley because he's got to move to the right. He's got to get reps there. He's got to get familiar with it. You do have Walker Little, though. You could have Kingsley develop for a little bit. You could give him time to adjust. You don't got to rush him in immediately. He's a guy I'd probably do that with. But I think you do a lot in this draft to give yourself starters, give yourself guys with potential, just really good football players. I think you got potentially 6 starters here, which is a big deal. That's a good draft for the NFL. You look at last year, I think we have 2 starters long term from that entire class. That's not good enough. And one of them was a fluky pick because they didn't want him the first 5 or 6 times, and he clearly should have gone in the second round. That's obviously Antonio Johnson. So that's where we are here. I like the scenario a lot for Jacksonville. I think these are good players. I'd be very happy if this was the draft. We'll see how things fall, though. I think Robinson very much could go earlier. Rest of these players, this is around their range. This is around where I expect them to go. So that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate you watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the Senior Bowl if you go watch, whether on TV or you come in person. If you come in person, come say hi. But that's all I've got. So have a great rest of your day. Finally, go Jags.